Hi guys, this is lesson 14.4, day 4. We are comparing more unlike fractions. So yesterday we took a look at some fractions that had different numerators and different denominators, and we learned that we can use multiplication and division to find a common denominator, and that way it's a lot easier to compare the two fractions. And yesterday, you might remember that we just had to multiply one of the fractions. Remember that, guys? We just had to multiply one of them so that we could get that one to have the same denominator as the other one, and then we could easily compare them. Today, we're going to be multiplying both of the fractions, and what we need to do is find a multiple of both the denominators. So let's look at our first problem. We have our two bar models. It's showing us each of these fractions, 3/4 and 1/6. So we've got 3 out of 4 here, 1 out of 6 here. And we have to figure out which one of these is greater. So what we want to do is we want to find a multiple of 4 that's also a multiple of 6. And when I say a multiple, all I mean is that if I were to count by 4, would I say this number? Okay? And if I were to count by 6, would I say this number? So we want to find a number that we would say when we were counting by 4s and by 6s. So if nothing is popping into your head, we can just start by counting by 4. So let's start. 4, 8, 12. 12. Wait a minute. What do I know about 6 and 12? If I were to count by 6, would I also say 12? Of course I would. It would be the second number I say because 6 times 2 is 12. So that means I just figured out that my common denominator for both of these fractions is gonna be 12, because I know that I can count by 4 and I'll say 12, and I can count by 6 and I'll get to 12. So now I just need to figure out, what can I multiply both my fractions by in order to get a denominator of 12. Okay, so let's first take a look at our 3/4. So our denominator here is 4, and we need to get it to 12. So we know, because we just did this, right guys? 4, 8, 12. We know that 4 times 3 is 12. So we're going to multiply our 3/4. We're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator times 3 to get our denominator of 12, which is what we want. Okay, so 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9. So now we know 3/4 is the same or equivalent to 9/12. And we can see that up here, right? This 3 out of 4 is the same as if we were to split that same bar into 12 pieces and color 9 of them. That's exactly the same size as that. So now we have our 9/12. Now we're going to take a look at our 1/6. 1/6, we know all we need to do is multiply by 2 to get our denominator to be 12. So 6 times 2 is 12. 1 times 2 is 2. And we can see that up here, guys. 1 piece out of 6 is the same as 2 pieces out of 12. So they are equivalent. So now we've got 9/12 and 2/12. So now it is much easier to compare them, right, guys? Because we know that 9 pieces out of 12, of course, is way bigger than 2 pieces out of 12. So that means 3/4 is greater than 1/6, because 3/4 is really the same as 9/12, while 1/6 is only 2/12. Okay, let's look at the bottom of our page. I see some number lines down there. And I also see a word that's highlighted in yellow that's letting us know that that is one of our vocabulary words, and it's kind of an important word for us to know. So the word that's highlighted says benchmark fraction. Okay, so a benchmark fraction, all that means is that it's a pretty common fraction that we can use to help us compare other fractions. So a benchmark fraction, one example of that would be the fraction 1/2. And the reason we use 1/2 is because we always know where 1/2 is, right, guys? It is exactly right in the middle of our 0 and our 1. Okay, and 1/2 is always right in the middle of whatever it's measuring, right? One piece out of a total of 2 pieces. So that's why we use 1/2 as a good benchmark fraction. And it also tells us down here, when you compare fractions with 1/2 like this, you are using 1/2 as a benchmark fraction. It's easy to use a benchmark fraction to compare fractions. The common benchmark fractions for comparing fractions are 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4. So those are just some of the common ones that we use because we know where they are, right? We know 1/2 is here. We know that 1/4 is here because that's one piece out of 4. Notice they split that one into 4 pieces. And then 3/4 is here. So 3 out of 4 pieces is 3/4. So we know 1/4 is smaller than 2/4 or 1/2. And then 3/4 is the largest one. Okay, so it's asking us to compare the fractions 3/4 and 1/6 with the benchmark fraction 1/2. So we want to see, is 3/4 bigger or smaller than 1/2? And we know just by looking at this, here's 1/2 right down the middle. It's just the number of pieces on each number line that changed, right, guys? This one's only split in 2 pieces. That's why our 1 out of 2. This one is split into 4 pieces. That's why it's the second piece, 2 out of our total of 4. And then this one is split into 6 pieces. And this one is 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6. And both of these, 2/4 and 3/6, they're both equivalent to 1/2. So we can clearly see that 3/4 is larger than, remember that alligator wants to eat the bigger one, 3/4 is greater than 1/2. And we can also see from this number line that 1/6 is much smaller, right, than 3/4, and it's also less than 1/2. All right, and then let's look at our next page. So we're just going to skip right down here to this part and look at number 14. Okay, number 14 is asking us which is less, 2/3 or 7/9. Now, remember guys, we need to have these fractions both have the same denominator in order to compare them. So we can tell just by looking at 3 and 9, we know that 9 is a multiple of 3, or if we were to count by 3, we would say 9. So let's count by 3. 3, 6, 9. So we know we have to count by 3 times to get to 9. So that means we're going to multiply our denominator times 3 to get that 9. And of course, if we do something to that denominator, we've got to do the same thing to our numerator. So 2 times 3 would be 6. That doesn't look like a great 6, but it's a 6. So now we know that 2/3 is equivalent to 6/9. So now it's a lot easier, right, for us to know which is less. 6 pieces out of 9, same as 2/3, or 7 pieces out of 9. And of course, 6 pieces out of 9 would be less than 7 pieces out of 9, right, guys? So we just figured out that 2/3 is less than 7/9 because we know 2/3 is really the same as 6/9. All right, number 15. Which is greater this time, 5/6 or 3/4? We need to get these denominators to be the same. And we can probably tell by looking at them that they are both, or there's a number that is a multiple of both of them. So if we were to count by 6, we would say 6/12, right? And if we were to count by 4, we would also say 12, right, guys? 4, 8, 12. So that means we just figured out that our common denominator is 12. So we need to get this 5/6 to have that denominator of 12, and we need to have that 3/4 have the denominator of 12. So we know we need to multiply that 6 times 2 to get 12. So if we do that to the denominator, of course, we're going to do the same thing to our numerator. So 5 times 2 is 10. So now we know 5/6 is equivalent to, that looks like a 6. It's supposed to be a 0. There we go. Good enough. So we know 5/6 is equivalent to 10/12. And then over here, we know that we have to multiply 4 times 3 to get 12. And we know we need to multiply 3. Whoops. All my writing went away. Sorry, guys. It happens sometimes. So since we did 4 times 3 down here to get that 12, then we need to do the same thing to our numerator. So 3 times 3 would be 9. So we know that 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12. And over here, remember, we had a 6 times 2 and 5 times 2. So we know 5/6 was equivalent to 10/12. So now they're a lot easier to compare, right, guys? We've got 10 out of 12 or 9 out of 12. We know that 10/12 would be greater than 9/12. So it looks like 5/6. I'm going to write it up here because, I don't have much room. So 5/6 is greater than 3/4. And then number 16, we are just using our benchmark fractions to help us figure out which one's greater, 5/6 or 3/8. So it's telling us to use the number lines to compare fractions with 1/2. So we know 1/2 is always right in the middle right here. And we can see that 5/6 is over here, and 3/8 is over here. So we can clearly see that 5/6, right, is greater than 3/8. And then also 5/6 is greater than 1/2. 3/8 is less than 1/2. All right, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you soon.